Hi guys, how are you? Welcome back to the channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Bruno Villas, and today I'm going to tell you another story. I need to warn you right at the beginning that this case involves children, so if you are sensitive to this type of content, I recommend that you do not watch this video. This case is a very recent case. I want you to stay with me until the end of this video to understand everything that happened to the little Arthur. Arthur Laban Hughes was born on January 4, 2014. He was the son of Olivia Laban, Thomas Hughes. Arthur's parents separated when he was just a year and a half old, and as in most cases, Arthur lived with his mother. As soon as Olivia separated from Thomas, Arthur's father, she soon began having a relationship with another man named Gary Cunninger. According to Olivia, Gary was abusive towards her, and because of this, in February 2019, during an argument, she stabbed Gary several times. He was found a few hours later lifeless in his apartment in Harbour. It's a neighborhood in Birmingham, England. Because of this, Olivia ended up being arrested and sentenced to 11 years in prison, initially in a closed regime. Little Arthur, who was 5 years old at the time, started to live with his father. Although the boy spent the weekends with his father, permanently living with him was a drastic change for the boy, mainly because he would need to change schools. He was already quite used to the teachers and classmates at his current school. His father lived in a house behind his parents' house, that is, Arthur's paternal grandparents. According to his grandmother, he was initially nervous but quickly became a happy, balanced child. In August 2019, Thomas met Emma on the dating site Plenty of Fish, popularly known as POF. Emma had some problems that she didn't mention right away. She had 2 children, and during her pregnancy with her youngest child, she had postpartum depression and rejected the child. Because of this, the one who had custody of the children was the father, Emma's ex. She had also attempted suicide twice, most recently in 2013. Thomas introduced his son Arthur to Emma at the beginning of their relationship. According to Emma, they got along very well from the beginning. When Thomas met Emma, Arthur was on vacation, so they spent a lot of time together. When the boy returned to school after the summer holidays, a teaching assistant stated that she was concerned about his condition. She noticed that the child became less happy as the days and months went by. She met with the child's father as well as the grandmother to talk about her concerns. This is because the boy was developing an obsession with topics such as weapons and death and was also afraid of being killed by his father. At the beginning of 2020, Arthur took his son to several medical appointments, but the boy was not diagnosed with any mental health problems. Meanwhile, the pandemic was spreading across the world, which led to the closure of all schools in the UK and a national lockdown at the end of March 2020. On the day of the lockdown, Arthur and his father were at Emma's house. Thomas's grandmother asked him and the boy to go to her house and stay there. After all, everything was still very uncertain about this virus, and the best to do was to be isolated with the family. But Thomas said it would be okay. He would stay at Emma's house until everything was sorted out. He even told his mother to rest, assured that both he and Arthur would be fine there and would avoid leaving unnecessarily. However, the following month, Thomas returned to his mother's house for a few days after allegedly being punched by Emma's ex-boyfriend and father of her children over an accusation that he had hit his child while the children visited their mother. Returning to Arthur while he was at his grandparents' house, the boy said that Emma was very mean to him and that she hit him, pinched him, and called him a horrible, ugly brat. His grandmother found several bruises on his back. When Thomas returned to his partner's house and refused his mother's request to leave the boy at her home any longer, she reported him to social services. A social worker went to visit Thomas, Emma, and the children the next day. She was informed that the injuries Arthur had on his body were caused by a fight between them and Emma's children. The social worker also reported that she felt that he was very happy and very safe, and that there were no protection problems in the house. Emma later said that she had coached the boys to lie about the incident. Thomas said she warned him that they would have their children taken away if he didn't agree with that story either. The incident was later reported to the police again by Arthur's uncle, and once again, nothing came out of it. Outside the social worker's eyes, Arthur was often forced to stand in the hallway for hours on end as punishment for his supposed bad behavior, and whether he left or sat down, the punishment would be more painful. Emma didn't think twice before hitting the boy. When Emma was alone with the children, she constantly sent messages to Thomas of the child crying and begging for food and asking to be released from punishment. In some audios, the boy cried and desperately asked for his grandmother and uncle. He said that no one loved him. The other voice in the audio was Emma deferring the worst insults to the poor child. Thomas often threatened to beat the boy. Emma texted Thomas that she wanted to be with him, but that she didn't want his son to be in the way. It got to the point where she forbade him to sleep in her children's room and forced the boy to sleep in the living room on the floor, as she didn't want him to ruin her sofa. When Arthur's school reopened on June 8th, he was not present. Thomas was contacted by the school about the matter, but gave several excuses for his son's absence. The couple installed a camera at home to monitor Arthur. The boy spent 35 hours of the 3-day period between June 12th and 14 in the corridor. He could not eat or drink. According to Emma, that was his punishment for misbehaving. When he tried to leave the hallway, go to the living room, she slapped the boy in the face and told him he should stay in the hallway as he was grounded. The camera also recorded the couple and Emma's children eating McDonald's, eating ice cream, playing while poor Arthur was deprived of food, water, and even going to the bathroom. On the morning of June, Emma woke the boy with a slap. She then took him along with her to spend most of the day at her hairdresser's house. The hairdresser was called Catherine. Throughout the 6 hours or so she was there, she forced the boy to stand near the door and frequently swore and shouted at him. The hairdresser's husband, named Tobias, reported that he gave water to the boy hidden from his stepmother while Emma was washing her hair in the sink. Tobias reported that the boy could barely hold a glass of water and that his eyes were sunken and full of fear. When Tomas went to pick up Emma and Arthur from the hairdresser's house, when he was getting into the car, the boy tripped, and his father said that if he didn't pay attention, he would rip his head off and play ball with it with Emma's children. Later that night, Thomas sat on Arthur's leg several times. He also told Emma to get rid of him quickly. In the morning, Arthur appeared in footage from the cameras installed by the couple, and he was very weak and struggling to lift the blanket. Even weak, hungry, and malnourished, he needed to fix the blankets. He knew that if he didn't do, the punishment would be much worse. Shortly after 1 p.m. that day, Thomas took Emma's children to the supermarket, leaving his own son behind with his stepmother. As soon as they were alone, Emma dragged the boy to the upstairs bathroom and forced him to swallow a substance that was called salt paste. From what I researched here, this substance is one of those sodium-based unblockers. Here in Brazil we have the green devil, for example, which is one of the most famous. After the boy swallowed this substance, he obviously started to feel very ill. He was vomiting and in agony for about 45 minutes, and during that time, Emma was sending several messages to Thomas complaining about the boy. In a call that lasted about 3 minutes with Thomas, the boy's father, he said she was supposed to burst the birthday balloons. Prosecutors in the case later understood that he was referring to the boy's head. During all the messages, Thomas always encouraged Emma to be violent towards Arthur. After struggling with the ingested substance, Arthur ended up fainting, and it was at that moment that Emma repeatedly hit the boy's head on the ground. This final attack would have taken place at approximately 2 p.m. This time was based on a photo that Emma sent to Thomas of the boy in agony shortly after the attack. She only called emergency services 12 minutes later, and during the call she told the attendants that the boy had hit his head on the bathroom door and then fallen to the floor and hit his head about 5 more times. The ambulance arrived and the boy was taken to Birmingham Children's Hospital. At the hospital, it was identified that Arthur had suffered brain death as a result of the bruises on his head. The doctors then decided that nothing could be done to reverse the situation. Death was confirmed around 1 a.m. the following day. He was 6 years old at the time. A medical review found that he was covered with 130 bruises, which likely indicated that the boy suffered some type of torture before he died. Poisoning by that substance that I told you about was also confirmed. But this was not the cause of death because several tests found that the boy was forced to ingest this substance several times a day. His stomach was completely damaged. Because of this, he could not drink water or eat. So there was only this substance in the poor boy's stomach. Later, it was reported that the few times he was offered food was because it was already rotten and the few times he drank water, the source of this water was the family toilet. The medical report, along with the history of complaints to the Child and Adolescent Defense Department, was enough for the police to indict the couple for the murder of Arthur Hughes. During the trial, Emma tried in every way to attribute the boy's injuries to him, even saying that he himself took the substance from the bathroom and that the bruises were due to falls and accidents that the boy suffered. According to her, the boy was very soft and fell at random. She said that the boy treated her children badly, she and Thomas, and that everything that happened was his fault alone. On the other hand, the boy's grandmother testified and said that she had been prevented from seeing her grandson since the beginning of 2020 and that the couple were cold and perverse. The hairdresser also testified, who told everything that happened to the boy during the period in which Emma received care at her home. Thomas was described by the prosecution as weak and manipulable. Prosecutors said he took on Emma's children for himself and rejected and neglected his own son. Even though he was not present at the final moments of Arthur's life, he was also found guilty of the boy's death due to the months of abuse and aggression he inflicted on the boy, and also for encouraging Emma to do the same. In December 2020, Emma was found guilty of the murder of Arthur Hughes and was sentenced to life in prison, with possibility of parole after 29 years in prison. Thomas Hughes was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 21 years in prison. The judge wrote in his sentencing comments as one of the most distressing and disturbing cases he had dealt with. The Attorney General's office issued a note stating that it will request a review of the sentences because, according to the prosecutor, the sentence given is a shame. And now I want to know what your opinion is on this case, so leave it here for me in the comments. What do you think, and whether you think their sentence was fair or not? If you've come this far with me, I'm going to ask you to leave a like, which really motivates me to continue bringing this type of content here for you. That was the case today. I'll stay here and see you in the next video.